Hey guys, my name is Trinity. I'm the community manager with Way of the Rosary, and this is part 1 of the Nunc series. And I'm just going to get right into it. So Nunc is Latin for begin again. And long story short, our life of prayer, being Catholic, being Christian, following the Lord, isn't something that we can just do like one and done. It's something that we have to keep pursuing over and over again every single day. And the reality of doing something, or at least trying to do something every day, is that sometimes we're going to fail. Sometimes we're not going to do it perfectly. And oftentimes this leads us to feel kind of discouraged. I know at least that's the case for me. So a little bit of my backstory. I was a missionary for 2 years, and while I was serving as a missionary, we made time to pray every day. It was really beautiful. We took 30 minutes every morning to sit with the Lord and just kind of give him everything that was on our heart and to ask him for all the graces that we need for the coming day. And because of this, I developed this habit of praying every single day, and it was really beautiful and really fulfilling and really, really good for me. When I came home after being a missionary, it meant that I kind of lost that structure a little bit, that sometimes I would pray earlier in the day, or sometimes I might find the time later, or maybe I wouldn't get the full amount of time that I wanted, or I'd get interrupted by a sibling, or because I had to go to work, or whatever it was. But yeah, this habit became more of a struggle. And recently I've been reading this really beautiful book. It's called Captivating. It's about being a woman. It's pretty solid. Highly recommend. It's changing my life. Anyway, I'm reading this book because it was recommended to me by someone that I really, really love. And as I was reading it, I was gaining all this knowledge from it, and I was really growing in my faith life, and it was changing a lot of the way that I saw myself and a lot of the ways that I saw the Lord. And it was just honestly just teaching me that the Lord loves me so much I will never even understand. Like, I don't get to understand yet, but the stuff that I do understand is mind-boggling. So I'm reading this book, and it's great, but then my life got busy, and I got kind of out of the habit of reading the book, which is kind of hard. And I was like, well, that's fine. I mean, I'll catch up on it later, whatever. And weeks go by, days first, then weeks. And then I realized it's been like 2 months since I picked up this book. Now, here's the thing. I am an avid reader. I've always loved reading. Some of my favorite books are the Lord of the Rings series. And so even though I wasn't reading this like really beautiful spiritual book, I was like diving into the Lord of the Rings again, which is really solid, and highly recommend that as well. There's lots of allusions to the Catholic faith in it. It's really fantastic. Anyways, shout out to Tolkien. Anyway, I was reading The Two Towers, and there's a scene in The Two Towers where, if you've seen the film, there's this guy named Wormtongue, who, if you haven't, he's this like really sketchy, weirdo dude, not a great guy, he's a bad guy. Anyway, so Wormtongue comes up to this girl named Éowyn, who's like basically the princess of this kingdom of Rohan. And the princess, this kingdom is under attack. It's been under attack for many, many years. Their king is kind of ill. He's weak. He doesn't do what he needs to do. He's not an effective leader. And because of this, Éowyn, this girl, is left exposed to this, like, first of all, this creepy, like, dude who's supposed to be advising the king, Wormtongue, but he's, like, also kind of the worst. He's not really doing his job advising the king. He's just corrupting him more. It's really rough. Anyway, and he comes to Éowyn, and he's like, you are alone. Like, in this hour of, like, all of this, like, you are alone. There's no one who comes for you. You're so beautiful, but you are utterly alone. And I read that part in the book, and I just kind of reflected on my own life, and I was realizing, wow, like, there are moments where I feel utterly isolated and utterly alone. And, like, this book, these characters are talking about, or, like, at least Wormtongue is kind of attacking Éowyn with this idea that, yes, she's good, and yes, she's beautiful, but ultimately she has no one. She's defenseless. I was like, wow, that kind of breaks my heart. Like, it's really hard that I'm in that spot too. And then later, I think the next day actually, I was reading Captivating again. I picked up that religious book that I had put down months prior that I loved, but just had kind of fallen under the habit of reading. And I read maybe 3 or 4 pages, and coincidentally, and personally I don't believe in coincidences, I believe in divine appointments, like the Lord sets things up in your life that are supposed to happen at a specific time. Coincidentally, the chapter that I was reading talked about that same exact scene in the Lord of the Rings, where Wormtongue comes to Éowyn in this moment of her need and just tells her that she's so utterly alone that she's defenseless. And the book was talking about how Satan does that exact thing, how Satan comes to us in moments of desolation, moments where we don't clearly hear God's voice, or we're struggling with a particular sin, or we're just feeling alone. And Satan comes and he says, you are alone. Maybe you're good, maybe you get things right sometimes, but you are alone, you have no one. And then this book counters that idea and says, no, like, that's not true. We have the Lord. We have ultimately our hero. We have the one who loves us better than anybody else ever could. And this book was just really, really consoling. And this beautiful consolation came at very specific timing, right? Because I was reading the Lord of the Rings book, and if I would have continued reading, Captivating, that religious book, I would have read that scene from Lord of the Rings and been like, oh, that's cool, I like that book. And then months later, I would have come across that scene in the Lord of the Rings as my reading progressed. But because the Lord loves me so well, even though I had been neglecting the religious book. I like reading other things, obviously, but just not that book specifically. I put it on my shelf and just said, I'll get to it later. The Lord had allowed that timing to be ordained so that I would read both of those different passages within a day of each other and just kind of come to the understanding that my timing is not God's timing. And maybe the Lord had me on a different path for a little while. Or maybe I fell into this discouragement or let myself hear these voices, these lies, but ultimately that I am on the right track and that God has me where he wants me, so long as I step in his presence and keep trusting him. So my encouragement for today, again, this is just part 1 of a 3-part series, is to step in, to begin again, and just pick up whatever that thing is that you've been putting off. Maybe you haven't prayed your daily rosary recently, maybe you're getting behind in the journals, or maybe you need to reach out to a friend and just say, hey, I need accountability. I'm having a hard time with my prayer life. Whatever it is, I encourage you to do it because the Lord is amazing and he loves us so well. Anyway, that is all. Check back for part 2. Bye.